Hello and welcome to our next DBT Talk Hub and Speak expert session. My name is Dmitro Polishuk. I'm a senior BI consultant at Scalefree. Today we're talking about DBT Source Freshness, what it is, why it is important, how it works, and how to run it to test your sources. Source freshness in DBT is a way to measure how up-to-date the data in your sources actually is. The big value here is understanding whether our upstream data is arriving on time. Freshness checks help us to enforce CLAs for data delivery and quickly spot delays in external systems, ingestion pipelines, or CDC processes. When freshness of the source data falls behind, it affects everything downstream. Dashboards, KPIs, operational reports, which are crucial for decision making. I've dealt with situations where a business report calculated metrics based on what it assumed was the latest available data in the sources. Several weeks later, we discovered that the latest data was actually several months old. The source hadn't been updated in a long time, which resulted in incorrect metrics calculation. So catching stale data in sources early is really important. The way it works is that DBT looks at a single configured column and takes the most recent timestamp for that column. This tells us when the latest record arrived. In short, source freshness gives us a simple, reliable signal about the timelines and availability of the data we depend on. Freshness checks are defined directly in the YAML file where your source is declared. This is important. The freshness belongs with your source definition, not with your models. Inside that source block, you specify the source freshness configurations. Here you configure your warn and error thresholds. These thresholds act like CLAs, helping you define what fresh enough looks like for your pipeline. For example, you might warn after 24 hours and error after 48. Then you set the loaded at field, which is the timestamp column DBT will use to determine when the most recent record arrived. This is the key field that enables DBT to understand how fresh your data is. An important note here is that freshness checks are always evaluated in UTC, regardless of your local time zone. Therefore, if the loaded at field using a non-timestamp, it has to be converted to UTC first. When DBT runs a freshness check, it simply finds the newest timestamp in the loaded at field and calculates how old it is compared to the current timestamp. Based on that age and your thresholds, DBT reports whether the data is fresh, delayed, or critically late or stale. The whole process is lightweight, fast, and tightly integrated with the source definition itself. Running freshness checks in DBT is very straightforward. The main command is DBT Source Freshness, which you can run locally or inside your orchestration environment. For example, define inside a job in DBT Cloud. This command will perform freshness checks for all the sources for which source freshness is configured. It is also possible to run freshness checks for a specific source or for a specific table in that source by specifying additional arguments in the DBT command. When you run DBT Source Freshness, DBT will evaluate the freshness rules you've defined for every data source and return the status, either pass, war, or error, depending on the thresholds you've defined. In DBT Cloud, freshness checks are even easier to manage. You can schedule a dedicated DBT Source Freshness job or include a freshness check inside a larger job. This lets you monitor freshness automatically, rather relying on someone to run it manually. Once freshness has been checked, you can view the results directly in the DBT Cloud user interface, where you can see the age of each table, whether it met thresholds, and when it was last checked. You can also view the output in DBT job logs. So, whether you're working locally or in DBT Cloud, freshness checks give you a fast and reliable way to monitor the timelines of your upstream data. More on this in our next video, where we will walk through a demo project in DBT Cloud, explore the available source freshness configurations in detail, run freshness checks against the source tables, and take a closer look at how DBT displays and reports the results in its user interface. If you find this video helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss future videos from Scalefree experts. See you in the next one.